Siwmai a croeso I my college experience, part 10.5, the Welsh Oracy Exam. Now, cyn I ni dechrau, before we start, I want to warn you, this video features a lot of Welsh. Look, dysgwr, bydde, learner.
Yes, of course. You look very much alike.
Really?
But I do translate it all. Now, this is because I do genuinely love learning Welsh. I find it important to cover it in the My College Experience playlist, achos fy arholiad llafar Cymraeg and bwysig iawn. The Welsh Oracy Exam is very important. Now, I did record it too, if you want to listen to it, but now I can't show you this exactly because I don't have permission to, but I can show you this because it's been slightly edited to only feature my voice. I'll bridge the gaps when I'm not talking and translate all of it for you. But I thought it'd be awesome to show what I had to do for the Welsh Oracy Exam that was on the 4th of April. Now, on the day of the Welsh Oral Exam, I had to wake up at 6:30, so about an hour earlier than I normally do, to get the 7:30 bus into college for 8. Now, I printed out all my coursework pieces. Now, you weren't allowed to bring in like a cheat sheet of notes. You weren't allowed that, unlike in year 11 when you could. But you could print out a blank copy of your coursework. I'll talk about that in more detail later. Now, I went into college A, my normal college, and the college computers caused me to have a mini heart attack because the first 2 computers didn't have the local printers connected, and I had 15 minutes before I had to get into the taxi to college B. Luckily, God threw me a lifeline, and the 3rd computer worked, and I had my two pieces of coursework out. Looking back, I didn't even use them, so that's just added stress on for nothing, and they were pointless. But anyways, I got into the taxi from college A to college B, sat down, college B, walked in, and just sat down as if it was a normal lesson. And then not long after, the Welsh exam assessor, he walks in. He was a lovely old man. He just walks into the lesson and he says the same mantra that we're now used to. Peidiwch a becso pawb. He's very nice, quite old, bless him, but he was really nice. He said, Peidiwch becso pawb. Don't worry, everyone. And he just introduces himself. Now, if you want to amuse yourself, you want to see a class of people pretending to know what's being said and smiling as they don't fully understand what's being said. It's like, but anyway, I was sat down drinking my water, everything to play for, all the cards on the table, and then I hear, right, Jamie and Millie, do you want to go first? That was a terrible impression. I am so sorry to my Welsh teacher for that, but this is all exaggerated for entertainment. So we follow the man out into a room, and he asks stuff like what subjects we're doing and our names, etc. Now, I think those questions were pre-game assessment, because if you can answer them, then you're proficient enough. But if you can't understand pwy, you're going to struggle. So it's a way for the examiner to know what you're like at Welsh without assessing you. That's what I think. Or I might just be overthinking things. I don't know. Now, how this worked was he wrote your info into this notebook. He says a bunch of techno babble about the exam and our names, and then he goes, Bore da, good morning, which was our signal that we were being recorded from then on. The assessment had begun. Now, me and Millie, we had a loose script. Not word for word, because you weren't allowed that, and it was a terrible idea to have that anyways. But we knew what order we were going to ask each other questions, so you asked me that, and then asked me that, and then asked me that. But the questions we were going to reply with weren't scripted at all. But the man practically ripped that up anyways by asking his own questions, which luckily was what we had planned. So to start off with, he asks us what the stories were in the film. Beth ydy a story in a film? What's the stories in the film? This was planned because I talk about the story in Patagonia, and then I pass it on to Millie, who talks about the story in Nghymru, in Wales, because there's 2 stories, that's 4, because there's 2 stories in Wales, in the film. Now, I can't remember exactly what was said and when, but I did record it, and it'll be playing soon. Now, with the year 11 Welsh Oracy result thing that I did, I am obliged to tell you that it's only my side of things, and that Millie's and the examiner's has been edited out completely because I do not have permission to use them. I will bridge the gap though between my assessment audio, the original audio, and Millie's part, and chip in, and the examiner's, and chip in with certain parts of the assessment. So like if I say something, pass on to Millie, I will then be in Millie's shoes saying that Millie said this and this and this, and then the examiner said this and this and this, and then asked me about this, and then played my audio again, if that sort of makes sense. Now this is different to the Year 11 exam, because in Year 11 I knew all the basic Welsh that we'd all be saying. Like, as students we only knew a limited amount of Welsh, obviously. And I don't want to brag, but in Year 11 in my class, I think I was the best at Welsh. I think I was the only one that somewhat enjoyed it. But there we go. I do enjoy the edited version I can show you. Now the examiner basically goes, Dyma Jamie and Millie. Here is Jamie and Millie. Now, let's roll the clip. Yn y ffilm, mae dwy stori yn cyd-redig. Mae stori yng Nghymru a mae stori yn Patagonia. Yn y stori Patagonia, mae Gwen a Rhys yn mynd ar wyliau. Mae Rhys yn gweithio fel ffotografydd a mae Gwen yn gweithio ar St Fagan. Ar gwyliau, mae Gwen a Rhys yn cwrdd â Mateo, pwy sy'n cysgu gyda Gwen a trwysio Rhys. Wedyn, mae Gwen yn dweud wrth Rhys dydy hi ddim yn cael babi, felly mae Rhys yn cadael. Y dywydd y ffilm, mae Rhys yn ffeindio Gwen, diolch byth, a dydyn ni ddim yn gwybod beth sy'n digwydd nesaf. Beth sy'n digwydd yn Stori Cymru? Starting the coursework, I struggled round about this time that I mentioned my Mateo and cysgu gyda Gwen. Mateo sleeps with Gwen. Good start, Jamie. Now you may have also noticed the examiner going, threw me off too. He was a nice man, bless him. He was very funny, and I knew he was trying to help me, which later on he did. But that threw me off a bit. Also, did you hear the diolch byth line as well? It's it's not the biggest error, but it's one of my biggest errors in the piece actually. Because I was meant to say something like, bauble bach, which is like, very Welsh. But stuff like that get you more marks, so you've got to over-exaggerate. But after mentioning how Mateo sleeps with Gwen, I have now just said, oh thank goodness. I moved swiftly on. Luckily I used diolch byth correctly the second time I used it, but the first mistake was already done. I now pass it on to Millie, who talks about the other story in the film, because there's two stories in the film that run alongside each other. As I mentioned in the coursework, my dwy stori and cyd-redig, two stories that run alongside. So Millie has now just talked about the story in Wales, as I talked about the story in Patagonia. She ends her turn by asking me, pwy ydy dy hoff cymeriadau? Who are your favourite characters? To which I say, fy hoff cymeriad ydy Cerys, achos mae hi'n hyderus a gyfres I wylio. Mae hi'n helpu Alejandro achos ar dechrau'r ffilm mae e'n swyl y dawel, ond ar ddiwedd y ffilm achos o Cerys mae e'n hyderus gyda Sissy. Mae profiad gyfres gyda fe achos o Cerys. Ond fy nghas cymeriad ydy Gwen, achos mae hi'n defnyddio pobl. Mae hi'n defnyddio Rhys I mynd ar wyliau. Mae hi'n defnyddio Mateo pan mae hi'n meddwl bod Rhys wedi mynd, a mae hi'n defnyddio hyn dyn ar parti pan dydy Rhys ddim yn dansio. That's me talking about Cerys being my favourite character and Gwen being my least favourite character. Now, whilst we weren't allowed to have a script in the exam, we could plan answers, which was cool. We planned to have distinctive favourites or least favourites, even if they weren't actually, so that we could say, dwi'n gytuno gyda ti, I agree with you. Dwi'n anghytuno gyda ti, achos I disagree with you because whatever. Millie interrupts me, as planned, and disagrees with me, saying that Gwen is my least favourite character. That's what she says. As a spur-of-the-moment thing, I say, bauble bach, which is shock. Bauble bach. Really? To this, this did make the examiner laugh, which was promising. I'd love to show you it, but I don't have the rights to, and I don't want to get into trouble. Especially not at the moment. I'm already pushing it with just showing you my lines. But there we go. Dwi'n credu bod Alejandro yn datblygu mwyaf, achos, fel roedd I dweud, ar dechrau'r ffilm mae'n thrill dawel, ond y dywydd y ffilm achos o Cerys mae'n hyder. Beth ydy'r perthynas gyda Alejandro a Sissy? Holy crap, my nerves were high then. Everything to play for. My cards were spread all out. I was blasting through that. I was terrified. I just talk about how Alejandro, who's one of the characters, develops in the film and that bluggy in the film, which was just repeating myself from earlier. To which then I ask, what's the relationship between Alejandro and Sissy, who's the Welsh girl in the film? Beth ydy'r perthynas gyda Alejandro a Sissy? So then, Millie says her planned bit as usual. I can't remember what she said, but then the examiner now threw in a spanner into our piece, saying, what's the relationship like between Alejandro and Cerys, who are neighbours? Alejandro goes with Cerys to Wales for eye surgery, although it turns out Cerys doesn't want to go for eye surgery. She wants to go and find her family farm that's later on drowned. It's a long story. Now, I get you watching how I watched the film, so I apologise for this. But yeah, the neighbours, she tricks him, she wants to go to a farm, she dies. Long story, short. But then, so at this point now, me and Millie, we looked at each other at the start, and I took the initiative to come up with something. Right. Millie took the initiative elsewhere as well though, but at this point it was me that came up with something, saying that they know each other, my known gwybod gilydd, they know each other, but Cerys tricks him, my Cerys yn twyllo fe. But I don't know the relationship 100%, because I didn't know what else to say. I threw it over to Millie, beth wyt ti'n meddwl? Ar ddechrau'r ffilm, mae nhw'n gwybod i gilydd, ond mae Cerys yn twyllo fe, felly dydw I ddim yn gwybod y cant y cant, beth wyt ti'n meddwl? Now, this exam, it's like playing hot potato sometimes. If the other's talking, it's not your problem. You gotta listen, because you can be asked anything at any time. But it's not your problem. You're not being marked at that very moment. But you're encouraged to help each other, which we did. Plus, I couldn't keep hogging all the examiner's questions. After this, the examiner elaborates on what was said. You know, not love, not romantic love, but as in family love. Efallai, ond mae hi'n gwybod hi, ond dydw I ddim yn gwybod os mae nhw'n gwybod gilydd yn dda iawn. Now, my first actual error was mae hi'n gwybod hi. She knows her. One of those hi'n is meant to be an E or a fe, an FE. Mae e'n gwybod hi or mae hi'n gwybod fe. He knows her or she knows him. But that's my first proper mistake in the exam. I don't think I'm worried about it though, because minor mistakes won't get you marked down. And that's only the first time we did it. But now the examiner asks, what scenes do you like? To which Millie comes in, she answers it and she passes it on to me. She says her favourite scene is when Cerys dies. Do I agree with her? Dwi'n anghytuno gyda ti, achos fy hoff olygfa ydy Alejandro yn y clwb nos. Achos mae e'n swil y dawel, ond mae clwb nos yn synllwyd iawn, felly mae humor yn y olygfa. Beth ydy'r themau yn hyn? Now that was actually my favourite scene, but I had a plan that I would disagree with her and say my favourite scene was Alejandro in the nightclub or something. I said disagree. Fy hoff olygfa ydy Alejandro yn y clwb nos, which is a load of crap. My favourite scene is also when Cerys dies, but we've got to disagree because disagreeing shows discussion and it gives you more marks. So it's easier to disagree. God, I would be a great marriage counsellor at this, isn't it? It's just easier to agree to disagree. Calm down. Which leads us nicely on to our next topic, pa themau yn y ffilm. What themes are in the film? Now Millie has now talked about to which Millie talks about all the themes in the film, including the history, and she asks if I agree. To which I do, and I mention the Shrivel Falkland, or Revel Falkland? Shrivel? I'm not sure. Dwi'n cytuno, a hefyd rydyn ni'n dysgu am y Shrivel Falklands gyda Martin. Mae Shrivel Falklands yn 1982. Dwi'n meddwl bod mae Shrivel Falklands yn mwy bwysig achos mae llawer o filoedd wedi lladd. The Falklands War. I talked about that, you know, in great detail as you can. And then we were talking about when the war was and the fact that my Welsh Oracy Exam took place exactly 40 years after it started, 1982 to 2022. Un now oeth dau to dau dig. The examiner now basically asks us to describe Patagonia, to which Millie responds saying, "Mae'n boeth uno, it's hot there," etc. And the examiner then asks us to describe the colours of Patagonia. Beth ydy y lliwiau o Patagonia? That was a question that threw us off too. So we start naming colours, you know, oren, white, orange, gwyn, white, glass, blue. To which he says, "What about Wales? Beth am Gymru? Gwyn, glass, etc. Lliwiau oer, cold colours for Wales." Now we were struggling here, so I try and get back on track, you know, trying to get back into our loose script. And I asked Millie, where would she rather live? She says Patagonia. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but it's planned. So I say Wales, and we have opposite views. We managed to make the examiner laugh a few times, and I think that's a good thing, because then it shows him being more natural at using Welsh, I think, I hope. I hope he wasn't laughing at the grade he was awarding us. I'd like not to think that personally, but I don't think he would do, because he was a lovely man, bless him, and I reckon he helped us as much as he could, and I think that we did better than we thought we would have in the end because of him. He asked us things that we never planned to talk about as well, but by talking about them that's more marks, so I can't complain. The examiner goes on about how there's no Instagram in Patagonia. You've got to be relatable to teenagers. I get that. We agree with him, saying that Patagonia and hen fashional. Patagonia is old-fashioned, and I say the obvious. My Cymru and mwy modern. Wales is more modern. Now after that, I ask, beth wyt ti wedi dysgu am y hanes? Because I am an idiot. You might not understand why, but it's because Millie's already answered this. And as soon as I realised my mistake, I stopped Millie struggling and wasting her time and struggling. So I say the following. I forgot I said earlier, that should have said I asked. But whatever, it made the same point. And then afterwards, the examiner asks us if we think the film is realistic. It's just a G instead of a C. Dydw I ddim yn gwybod achos mae'n I drama. Mae triongl cariad yn y ffilm yn unrealistic, dwi'n credu bod. Well, see, Welsh isn't so completely different. There are words, there are cognates, words that sound the same, or near cognates that nearly sound the same. Now this was all off the top of my head. Not bad improvisation in Welsh. Now the examiner places a little bit of context. At the start of the story that took place in Patagonia, do Rhys and Gwen stay together after Gwen cheated and Rhys comes back for her? Because the movie ends, right, with Rhys walking towards Gwen who's here. He looks at her, she looks at him, but we never know what happens next. Dydw I ddim yn gwybod, ond dwi'n meddwl bod mae Rhys wedi dysgu o Martin, o mae un stori.
Yeah.
So, felly, efallai, mae'n bosibl, wrth gwrs. Beth wyt ti'n meddwl? I am honestly amazed at the amount of crap my brain can improvise, especially in Welsh, right? It's all those years of media where if you can prove this correct, or in this case say it, you're correct. I like that. That is cool. Now, I've passed on the same question to Millie, who manages to also answer the question decently, and then the examiner now asks us what our favourite story was. Now, I say the Patagonia story. My well story am Patagonia. Dwi'n credu bod achos mae'n mwy diddorol I wylio. Beth wyt ti'n meddwl? I was really nervous now. My stuttering was at an all-time high, I was painfully quiet, and I had brain fog. The examiner now talks about his favourite piece, his favourite story, I think, and some funny moments in the movie. Now, I have to chip in sometimes, you've got to milk all the marks you can. Even if you start to get annoying, you've got to get your marks. And so the examiner asks if we think Wales is realistically portrayed in the film. Dwi'n credu achos mae Gwen yn dweud wrth Alejandro mae Cymru yn anodd I teithio, a dwi'n cytuno gyda hi. But the examiner now asks, what's the effect of having the characters in the film speak Welsh? Because all the characters in Wales speak Welsh, apparently in this film, which was leading us to say that the film is unrealistic. Mae'n dangos y berthynas gyda Sbaenig, Saesnig a Sbaenig, Saesnig a Cymru. Fel hefyd mae cerddoriaeth yn dangos y berthynas achos mae cerddoriaeth yn tri iaith. Dwi'n deall Saesnig a Cymraeg, wrth gwrs, ond dydw I ddim yn gwybod y cerddoriaeth Sbaenig. No, I'm in full panic mode now. It's like I'm analysing a whole new person. The hardest question asked by the examiner now was what filming techniques are used. We've never touched on that. Never! Yn y ffilm mae cerddoriaeth Cymru yn datblygu Cymraeg. Technegau. Oh, listen to 16-year-old Jamie suffer. He's really struggling to get to the point where he's thinking out loud. Oh. Now, the examiner does throw us a lifeline here, about asking us if there's any symbolism in the film. Now, this actually got us back on track, because we never planned to talk about the Blodeuwedd, which is a Welsh love story in the film, and a real-life Welsh love story. But it's extra stuff, and so it won't hurt to mention it. It's about no, I can't explain it all here, because I barely know the story myself, but by mentioning it, it's extra marks. Millie contributes to this one. Nice one. Then the examiner goes back to his questions about techniques on the camera and all that jazz. Now, I had to tell him that I didn't understand. Dydw I ddim yn deall. Luckily, he didn't stop, though, and he worded it in a decent way. And I understood it. I understood what he was asking me then. Roy, yn y ffilm, mae slow motion I dangos y dydd. Mae'n dangos, mae amser yn mynd am cyflym. Now, we hadn't learnt any Welsh on camera angles. That's media work. That's not Welsh. I'm not combining the two. Now, at this point, he seemed impressed, because at the end of that he says, technig da, good technique. Because it's AS level, you have to have a little bit of leeway with the words. If you don't know, like, really obscure, really fancy Welsh words that you're never going to use in in normal conversations, then slow-mo is fine to say. You can say English words in your Welsh. Now, that's actually a really good answer for that from me, if I may say so myself. Shows that time is going fast. That was a really good, made-up-on-the-spot thing from me there. Siaradon ni am storiau y ffilm, cyfeiriadau, themau, hanes, cerddoriaeth. Wyt ti'n meddwl bod mae rhywbeth arall? Dwi'n trio I feddwl. Dwi'n meddwl rydyn ni'n gorffen. Nearly over. He throws us our last lifeline. Is there anything else you want to say? I was covering my tracks. We covered this. Is there anything else you want to say? We talked about the stories in the film, the characters, the themes, symbolism, camera angles, etc. And I asked the examiner if there was anything else he wanted to talk about or hear from us. But he didn't have anything else he wanted to hear us say, so we finished the film there. We finished our assessment there. The rest of the clip is just me saying, dwi'n meddwl bod rydyn ni'n gorffen. I think that we're finished. He stops the recording, and we then have to do the coursework. Now, I hate the coursework even more than the assessment that I've just done. As I'm writing this, it's the 7th of the 4th now, so I've been writing this for 3 hours because it's so long. And yes, the editing is going to take ages. This script has taken hours to edit, to write, put together. But now, how this worked was Millie left the room first for the coursework, and I'm going first. Now, I had the 5 most common questions I was to expect to be asked, known in my head. Here's the raw footage that I can show you, apart from the examiner asking the questions. So the examiner restarts this filming device he's got and starts talking about what I've done in my coursework.
And dwi'n dewis y topic achos mae Caerdydd yn bwysig I fi. Dwi'n dwylio Caerdydd, ond os gallwn ni dewis eto, os gallwn ni ysgrifennu eto, faswn ni ysgrifennu am Doctor Who, yn bod yn onest, achos dwi'n dwylio Doctor Who, a Torchwood. Pwy ydy dy hoff meddyg o Doctor? William Hartnell.
Pawb.
Now the overall assessment is 40 marks. I don't know why I'm doing that to represent 40. I hope you can count. Now 20 is for talking about the Patagonia film, and 20 for the two pieces of coursework that I now have to talk about. So I explain that Cardiff is my topic on both pieces of coursework. He asks us, why did you choose Cardiff as your topic? And I answer. Now still in panic mode, the examiner says, and me, and me, when I said I love Doctor Who and Torchwood. Yes, I managed to put them in my Welsh coursework, which was cool. So I asked him what his favourite Doctor was, but he didn't have a favourite one. And admittedly this was going off track, but, well, he brought us back when he thought that we couldn't talk about it anymore. So that was nice. He says every one of them, pob in, every one. Now I thought he meant the first one, which was William Hartnell. But no, he loved all the Doctors equally. Good on him. He doesn't have a favourite Doctor. On doing Angatine, no cant to cant. I disagree with him 100%. There are better ones than others. But then, after that, he had to bring us back into coursework, damn it. Now, after that, he asks me what's in the pieces. Beth ydy y darn, I think. What's the piece? I don't know.
Mae nhw'n anghydydd. Yn darn 1, dwi'n mynd I Cyngerdd Tom Jones yn Stadium y Principality, a dwi'n siarad gyda fe. Mae sgript. Rydyn ni'n siarad am caneuon Tom Jones a cynlluniau ar ôl y Cyngerdd. Mae darn 1 ydy'r hoff darn achos mae'n mwy personol I fi. Dwi'n dwylio gwrando ar Tom Jones ar radio, Spotify, YouTube. Mae'n arbennig I fi.
But he asked us, and this was the longest answer I had. This was one that I was practicing on my Instagram live. That was fun. There's a lot of lies here. You have to lie a lot in Welsh Oracy exams so that you've got things to talk about.
Yn fy ail fan, dwi'n mynd I Caerdydd gyda fy neulu. Rydyn ni'n gwneud llawer o pethau. Rydyn ni'n bwyta allan I brecwast. Mae'n flasus.
Now, I was on a roll. I do get stopped and asked the same questions though. Is it the same question though? Is it a script? Is it a diary? Etc.
Mae'n dyddiadur.
Okay.
Now this took a while to explain because my mind just went blank again.
Rydyn ni'n bwyta allan I brecwast. Mae'n flasus, ond mae'n afiach iawn achos ces I brecwast selsig o'i a bacwn. Mae'n llawer o brasta. Wedyn, rydyn ni'n mynd I gwylio rygbi. I dweud y gwir, dydw I ddim yn hoffi rygbi achos mae'n diddorol.
I actually hate this. I made another mistake. I said, I don't like rugby because it's interesting. Apparently. But that's what I've said. 3 major mistakes. I was sneaking Doctor Who into my coursework like in my first piece of coursework, I've got Tom Jones saying, my box glass and teithio dros y byd. Wyt ti'n jocan? A blue box travels across the world, are you joking? A bit of humour. That's Welsh for humour. Yeah. He asks me what my favourite piece was. Beth ydy the hoff darn?
Fy hoff darn ydy darn 1, mae sgript personol I fi a mwy hwyl I ysgrifennu am. Ond mae'n anodd, roedd hi'n anodd I ysgrifennu achos rydyn ni'n redig allan o pethau I siarad am.
And I told him what my favourite piece was, and my struggles with it too. He then asks me how and what research I did.
Defnyddiais I wy, mae wefan Stadium y Principality, wefan Tom Jones, a siaradais I gyda Fy athro is achos mae hi'n mynd I gweld Tom Jones yn 2020.
So I tell him. He asks if I enjoyed doing the coursework. Now for once, I didn't lie. I didn't lie in this, you know. I'm going to tell him the truth.
I dweud y gwir, naddo achos ei well da fi arholiadau. Dydw I ddim yn gwybod pam, ond dwi'n meddwl bod dwi'n well na am arholiadau.
You don't get less marks for saying so, luckily. As long as you can say it, and correctly, that's perfectly fine. You know, that's absolutely fine. And I tell him I prefer exams anyway. He then says, would I choose the subject again?
That's ni well na ysgrifennu am Doctor Who. Me Torchwood.
I end on my love for Doctor Who. The rest of the clip is just me walking out of the room then, whilst Millie has her coursework discussion. I wait for her, and we go back to class together. Now, our teacher brought some Our teacher brought some snacks for the class to have after the assessment. She is amazing. She's helped us a lot during this. She's amazing. We sat and we discussed what was said and how we thought we did. We were very confident that we did what we had to do. Overall, I think we covered everything. I do need to get a decent mark, but my nerves kind of ruined it a bit, you know. I want to reiterate, dwi'n dwliad dysgu Cymraeg, I love learning Welsh, but the stress that exams put on you, you're going to make people think the opposite about the exam, about learning the language at all. Because if you really love a subject, and so much stress is put onto it, you're going to associate that stress with what you love, and then you're going to want to get rid of the whole thing. I'm not going to find out my mark until August, so the best thing I can do is move on, really. Looking back, I mean, it's kind of on me, really. I wouldn't have known I made those mistakes without listening to it back. So in a way, I've kind of caused more stress on myself by knowing that I've made the mistakes and that they're going to be examined. But at the same time, you know, I'd rather have it. And yeah, because either way, whether I do or don't, isn't going to affect my mark either. So it's just nice to have. The mistakes I've made, they were minor. Just saying he instead of her, or vice versa, and using the wrong adjective. But when you put it into context, that's 3 mistakes in about half an hour. So I don't think they're going to do much about it, personally. But only time will tell. Thank you for watching, guys. Be sure to like, subscribe. Have a good day. Don't forget to drink hot chocolate. Stay safe. And from me, it's goodbye for now.